Let's get a songbook and turn to page 527. 527. If anybody else has been acting up, I need you to move to the front also.
I know not why God's wondrous grace to me He hath made known. For why unworthy Christ in love redeemed me for His own. And I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that He is able to keep that which I've committed unto Him against that day. I know not how this saving faith to me He did impart, nor how believing in His word brought peace within my heart. And I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that He is able to keep that which I've committed unto Him against that day. I know not when my Lord may come at night or noonday fair, nor if I walk the veil with Him or meet Him in the air. But I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that He is able to keep that which I've committed unto Him against that day.
Brother Kermit, would you pray for us? Man, it's good to see everybody here tonight. And Wednesday nights is looking good around here. Used to, we'd struggle to get, everybody's over next door, but either nobody's working over there or we're just getting a few more people. Maybe that's it. But we're glad you're here. We do want to remind you Sunday is First Responder Sunday, and we're hoping to try to honor some of those folks. If you know somebody, they work in some sort of caring, nurses, whatever, invite them. Sometimes people just need a little something, a little push that might get them in here. So we'd like to at least to honor them for a day, and then get them in part of the church and see if they enjoy service in the little old Baptist church in the big city of Cunot. We've got one road, and they've been working on that road forever. But Miss Kay has them so scared when the kids start to get out of school, they stop all of their equipment. They just stopped it out there today. I watched them out the window. They all just sat still and waited for all the kids to get in their cars and get out of here, because I think Miss Kay went out. She made them move all their stuff over here a couple of weeks ago. Kids were coming in. She went, "Hey, you're going to have to move this stuff. We got kids coming to school." So they moved everything. So I think the lesson around here is don't cross Miss Kay. I think they're going to learn that. And so. But they're going to get it fixed up. I don't know what they're doing. It looks they're digging off one side and then filling it back up, and digging off the other side and filling it back up. I thought they just dug off the whole thing, but I'm sure they know more about it than I do. Okay, I don't remember anything else, so let's see what's going on our prayer list. I got some things written down here. Becky Hoffeditz a couple weeks ago had us put Zach Biggerstaff on their list. He was going to Florida. I'm trying to see where he's at on here, but he needs a new heart. He's young and he needed a new heart. Well, he got it finally. He got it Sunday, and he's doing fair. I mean, they're still got him partially sedated and all that. They're slowly trying to get him off the ventilator and things such as that. But so far, things are going well with him. And so continue to pray for him. For Zach Biggerstaff, he's not even 50 years old yet. And so that's fairly young to be having to have a heart replacement. But if you think about it, probably got more energy at 50 or younger than 50 than you would if you had to have one replaced at 75. So maybe there's a good side to that. And then Aaron, I'm going to have to read this off my phone because he wanted me to write it down. I'd have been writing all night. I'd still been back there. And so his sister-in-law, her dad just found out. He went in and had a colonoscopy last Wednesday, and they found 2 masses. Then they found heart blockages. He has to get heart work done, maybe a stent. Then they found that the masses were cancer in his colon. So now they're after that and said it's kind of been a whirlwind for him, and he's doing okay right now, but he's had to have a blood transfusion for other things, but they asked that we keep him in prayer. His name is Bud Page. We'll just put him on the cancer list, I guess, but Bud Page, I don't know how old he is or anything, but it's Aaron's brother's wife's dad. And I got that right, too. I talked to Mr. Tom Madden this week, and he had every 3 weeks he has, I don't know infusion, I guess what they call them. And he said this one went better. This one did better, and he was doing much better afterwards and things. I mean, of course, for everything you get, it causes other problems. So he's having to deal with a lot of different things, but he said that things went much better this week, and so he said he's always calling and giving me all the bad news. He thought he'd call and give me some good news this time. So that was good to hear from him. What's going on out here? Yes, ma'am. We just put him on the right ends for now. Keith Davidson. Is it from him having to carry you guys all down there and none of you's helping? That could be it, huh? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Say the name slow again because I'm still not hearing very good. Dina Bargan. Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. We've had you on there too long. See what happens? People get on there. If you don't ever give us your name, take it off. Everybody just leaves it on there. It's a wonder as many times we've made new lists, we didn't get you moved over on mothers and babies by accident or something. So I said, I don't hear good, and she doesn't hear good, and she types it for me, so who knows what's going to happen. Now, if you go out and break your leg this week, it ain't my fault. You told us to quit praying for you. Bradley Chandler. Brad Chandler, he's on list number 4. He's been on there for a long time. He'd run marathons again now. Brother? Okay. thought we had her on there. I don't know how we got her off. Put Thelma back on there, Thelma Benson. Yes, ma'am. Are you? So you want back on the soccer team? Yeah, that Larkin's there right beside you. Hook back together. Mhm. Okay. Yes, ma'am. John Henry's moving out down here. Well, well, we better pray for camp then, because won't be nobody doing any work no more now. He's been doing it all. Yeah, we'll have to get somebody down there to do some work, because I think John Henry's been doing most of it. These guys don't want to admit it, but. Well, I know an office where you're going, where you're moving to. I know an office you can go in anytime. Will help me straighten that person out. Works in that office. Anything else going on? Okay, well, hang on to your prayer list, and we'll finish up here in a little bit. You got your Bibles open tonight to Revelation chapter number 21. We're going to do a lot of reading tonight, and I hate to admit this, but I used to brag a little bit about having short sermons on Wednesday, but they're getting longer, and I don't know what to do about it. I got started on this thought about heaven, and a couple weeks ago we talked about the trip of a lifetime, and I don't even remember now all the questions, all the titles that I've used in there. And I'm stalling really because I can't find Revelation 21. It should be back there toward the back somewhere. But this is the third. I kind of put them in a series, and maybe we mentioned the first week that if you're going to go somewhere, it's always good to know somebody that lives there. Somebody that's on the inside can tell you where the good places to eat and all that. And so we kind of went with that thought, and we call it the Insider's Guide. But a couple of years ago, Susan Gully loaned me a book. Some of you might have read it. The fellow that wrote it named Randy Alcorn. Now, there's probably things that him and I might disagree on, but he's got an excellent book on heaven. Now, there's a lot of stuff in it, and I don't remember half of it what I read, but I wrote a lot of stuff down. And then there's another resource that I don't know who I borrowed it from. I don't have it now, but it's Dan Schaefer's book, A Better Country, Preparing for Heaven. And I'm going to probably I'm going to read several things that I put in my notes from those two people tonight about it. So we're still talking about heaven, but tonight my questions, my thoughts a little bit more. Sometimes people, what are we going to do in heaven? People got all kinds of ideas, and it's funny because some people say, well, we're just going to sing forever, and those same people sit with their arms crossed during church now. What in the world is it going to be like for eternity if you don't like to sing? So we're going to look at some of that. And again, before you make a trip, it helps to know as much as you can about where you're going, your destination. And That's why they have travel guides. And those people tell you the places to stay and best places to eat and a list of activities that are available to you. Well, if you're in here tonight and you're saved, heaven is not a vacation destination. Even though we kind of portrayed it like that, it's not. It's an eternal destination. You're going there forever. It's the hometown of Jesus, and he's there now. So what are we going to do there? Is it probably the biggest lie that people think, or maybe not, maybe we call it falsehood. That makes it sound a little bit better. But the biggest trouble people have is people get in their head that heaven is going to be boring, because we don't know what we're going to do there. We can't figure it out. And back in my day, in 1977, that's the year my wife and I got married. We graduated. All kinds of things happened that year. And she's probably still dreading that year. But there was a fellow named Billy Joel. He was 28 years old, and he wrote a song entitled "Only the Good Die Young." Some of you don't sing it if you know it. I don't want that, but I'm going to read you some of the words from it. It says, here's what he says. He says, "They say there's a heaven for those who will wait. Some say it's better, but I say it ain't. I'd rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints. The sinners are much more fun. Only the good die young." Well, he's still around, but he's 74 years old now. He turned that in last May, and so he's not so young anymore, and he's probably not so good. And he didn't die young, but he did get one thing right. People do die, young and old alike. They're going to die sometime. The Bible says it's appointed a man wants to die, and after this, the judgment. One fellow that I remember years ago, I heard him on TV, and I despised him. I mean, and I still despise him, and I don't even think he knows who he is today. He's got dementia really bad and several other things, but his name was Ted Turner. And he had all kinds of things to say about heaven, and here's one thing he said. He says, "Remember, heaven is going to be perfect, and I don't really want to be there. Those of us that go to hell, which will be the most of us in this room, most journalists are certainly going there. Who wants to go to a place that's perfect? Boring," he said. Boring. That's people's opinion. But there's an old writer that I've got several of these things back there in my office, C.S. Lewis, and he said he had to say about people who don't understand heaven. Here's what he had to say, and I love what he had to say. He says, "There's no need for you and I to be worried about facetious people who try to make the Christian hope of heaven ridiculous by saying they do not want to spend eternity playing harps. The answer to such people is that if you cannot understand books written for grown-ups, they should not talk about them." That's pretty good. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know anything about the Bible, so don't give your opinion on it. And I'd love to say that to a lot of people, but he said it well for us. And of course, some of you you see them Far Side cartoons in the newspapers they used to have, and I do kind of like them. But I did see one where there's a fellow sitting there on a cloud with his angel wings, and he's saying, "I wish I'd brought a magazine," sort of like he's bored. Is heaven going to be boring? That's my thought tonight. And are we going to sit on clouds and play harps for eternity? And the answer is no, nothing like that. The Apostle John, he described the new heaven and the new earth in Revelation chapter number 21. We're going to read 5 verses here, then we're going to go to chapter 22, so you may as well stick with me. And I'm going to read a lot of verses tonight. I probably won't have you turn to all of them. But here's what John saw in chapter 21. He says, "I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. And God shall wipe away all the tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful." Then if you'll turn to chapter number 22, I'm going to read some he says there also. Verse number 1, it says, "And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. and there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and of the Lamb shall, let me read it again, and there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. And they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads. And there shall be no night there, and they need no candle, neither light of the sun. For the Lord God giveth them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. Now, I'm going to probably say some things that I've said in the last few weeks because I don't remember everything I've said in the last few weeks, but let me just refresh you on this. If you're saved today, when you die, your soul and your spirit go immediately to be with the Lord. You're not in a grave. You're not somewhere out in la la land between here and there. You're not just yearning for something. But we learned last week, I think it was, the definition of a Christian would be absent. Death for a Christian is absent from the body, present with the Lord. That's the way it is. Now, some people don't believe that, but the Bible teaches that. So those who have died in Christ, they're in heaven with Christ now. But it's not the final heaven. We just read a little bit about it. And God's going to create a new heaven and a new earth. Now, that's kind of amazing because the heaven he's got now is perfect. This was going to be better. He's upgrading on perfection. And just as he redeems and resurrects people, he's going to redeem and resurrect this old earth. Now, I'm going to read you a quote out of Randy Alcorn's book that I've already forgot what it's titled, Heaven, I think it is. But here's how he describes this new creation. He said, it's no coincidence that the first two chapters of the Bible begin with the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the last two chapters begin with the recreation of the heavens and the earth. All that was lost at the beginning will be restored at the end, and far more shall be added besides. The power of Christ's resurrection is enough to not only to remake us, but also to remake every inch of the universe, mountains, rivers, plants, animals, stars, quasars, and galaxies. So my thought is, we need to get ready. We're headed for a place like we've never seen anything like it. And I look forward to this. We're looking at the most amazing heaven and new earth, more beautiful, more bountiful than anything we could ever imagine. Now, I've got some pretty good imaginations of places I like. Nothing compares. That's where we're going to be living for eternity. And once you understand the things that we're going to be doing in heaven, then you'll get the idea of it being boring is not there. So I'm going to try to give a few reasons tonight, maybe 5 reasons that I've got written down here why heaven won't be boring. And I'm going to reread a couple verses here at the start. But heaven can't be boring because we're going to be exploring all this beauty we just read about. We got eternity to figure it out. And look in chapter 22 and verse 1 again. It says, and he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Now think with me for a minute tonight. Try to think of the most beautiful place you have ever seen that you visited on this earth. Now, I've not been a lot of places myself. We took a trip a few years back out to the Rockies, and we seen the mountains. We went to Yellowstone, and there's probably other places that are better, but that's as good as I've ever been. And it was very nice. I mean, there's not too much like that out there. And but I've heard a lot of people talk about the Grand Canyon. I've never been there. My wife, she wanted me to pull that camper all the way out there. I'm not doing it. So we haven't went yet. That's the reason, because we're at a. But people talk about. I've been to Canada, just over the edge there, but I've never been. But I hear people talk about it. There's a place, the Monterey Peninsula in California. Anybody ever been there? Don't know anything about it, but it's listed as one of the most wonderful places in the world. And of course, there's the black sands of Hawaii and the white sands of Destin. And one fellow wrote down the Zion National Park in southern Utah, he said, is the absolute most beautiful place he's ever seen in his life, and he's been a lot of them. I never even heard of it till I read about it. I don't know. But can you think of the most beautiful spot in your mind of this earth? You think, man, if I lived there all the time, what it would be? Well, here's why I'm saying that. Because compared to the beauty of this new heaven and this new earth that God's going to produce for us, the greatest places we can think of on this earth would be comparable to a city dump. That's hard to imagine, because these are wonderful places, but nothing compared to what God's got for us. There's much more to the new heaven and the new earth than just the heavenly city. When we read that, that was what was you seen in the heavenly city. Well, that's just a little part of it. The heavenly city. There's planets, there's galaxies, and we can go wherever we want. So I guess we'll go to explore them. That's something that won't be too boring if you're doing stuff like that. We've got plenty of time, and so humanity has always had the urge to explore. Even when you're a kid, if you see a cave, you cannot stay out of it. You have to go in it. You have to explore things. People's done that, and that's why the Europeans sailed across the Atlantic looking for India, and they discovered what they called this new world. And back in the 60s, you remember in the 60s, we was having this space race with the Russians. We was trying to be get out ahead of them, and I was reading there, in 8 years, NASA went from putting a man in space to putting a man on the moon. Well, in 1968, they made a movie talking about this. They was assuming that we was going to continue this rate of investigating and this rate of advancement and learning things scientifically. And so they released this movie in 1968 called 2001, A Space Odyssey. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I read a little bit about it. I probably have seen it, but I don't remember stuff after I watched it about 6 months later. But here was their thought. By 2001, we were going to be able to have deep space vehicles that could carry humans into all kinds of way out places in our solar system and beyond. They's way off. We're not even sending out space shuttles anymore that I know of. We've quit. I don't know what we're doing. And we have sent a few space probes to Mars and beyond, but basically, we're earthbound people. That's what we are. We're here, and we stick around here. Now, my oldest brother, he used to be a big Star Trek person. Now, I never was a Star Trek person, but I wrote down, I looked this up, and I wrote down the beginning lines of Star Trek. Here they are. Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise, its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. Well, space is not the final frontier. Heaven is. And I'm going to go there without a starship. I'm just going to take off one of these days. He'll come get me. Maybe he'll come get us all at the same time. If not, I'll go by way of death. But we don't need a starship, and we're going to see the final frontier. Now let me read a little bit more that this Dan Schaefer writes in his book. He says, God has made us to explore and discover with great delight. We use spaceships and submarines because we need them, because our bodies are not perfectly fitted to explore our world without them. But Jesus, in his glorified body, which is the prototype of ours, was able to ignore the physical obstructions of our planet, like walls, gravity, density, and other things. Though physical himself, he vanished and reappeared. He passed through solid walls. He floated up into heaven, defying gravity. Our new bodies will be made perfectly to explore the new heaven and earth. We have heard the phrase in history, the golden age of exploration. In reality, that age lies ahead of us, not behind us. Something to think about. So, is heaven going to be boring? No, because we're going to be exploring all the beauty that God's put out there, and it'll take a long time to get it looking over. And by the time you get it done, then you might want to start again. You do that here. You take a few vacations here, there, and yonder, and after about 10 years, you want to go back and see the place again. We may do that while we're in heaven. Here's a second reason I say heaven can't be boring, because we're going to be enriched by meeting new friends. Here's how John says in Revelation 7. He says, after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hand. Now, that doesn't mean that we're always going to be wearing white robes in heaven and palms in our hand. But that's what people get in their head. They read a verse like that, and that's heaven, so I don't want to go. That's a boring thing. Well, that's not what it's saying. But in Revelation 7 here, he's describing a very specific coronation event in heaven. There'll be all kinds of activities going on, and this is one of them in heaven. But what I notice from that is the multitude. People from every nation, every tribe, every language, they're going to be our fellow citizens. Now, we're kind of messed up here in this world because we think anybody that comes in from a stranger, we don't want to have nothing to do with them. They're from another country. I don't like them. They're an alien. Now, I'm not for bringing people in and just letting them bombard us, but just because somebody's skin's different, why would we hate them? Why would we dislike them? But we do that here in this life. We won't in heaven. We're going to want to know everybody. But the thing is, I think we'll just know them. But here I am in heaven. I might run across the old King David over there. I might go over there. Now, I think we're going to have perfect knowledge, so we probably don't have to ask questions, but maybe I just do it because I need something to say anyhow. But I'll go to David. Hey, David, how tall was Goliath? I mean, what was it like standing there with your little slingshot looking up at that fella? I'll go ask him like that. And I might meet this big tall tax collector named Zach. Oh, he was a little short guy, wasn't he? Climbing up a tree. Zacchaeus. I might talk to him a little bit and see what he's got to say. And one fellow said on Facebook, he said we'll meet Eve and we'll be able to ask her, what in the world were you thinking? So we can do that when we get to heaven. And we might see Daniel and ask him, what's it like to spend the night reading between the lines? Some of you get that here in a little bit. And we might think, well, we could ask Peter, what's it like walking on water? But then again, we'll be in heaven, so maybe we can just go do it ourselves. There's water there. I don't know. I don't know. I just assume we'll be able to walk on water if we want to. But we talked about this a few weeks ago. Will we know our family members there? Absolutely. We'll know them. We'll know them better than we know them in this life. In fact, I think we'll know everyone in heaven better than we know our closest friends even down here. I can't give you a whole lot of Bible on that, but just the things I read. And I thought about this when I was writing this down. Probably in the patriarch's day, well, and like the days of Noah, he lived 900-some years, so he knew his grandkids and the great-grandkids and the great-great-grandkids and all. I don't know my great-great-grandfather, do you? I never met him. But you know, if your great-grandparents were saved, you can sit down and talk with them in heaven. Only it won't be like they're old now and you're young. I don't know how to be like. And maybe that child that you lost or something, they'll be there. You just sit down and talk with them. I don't know the age, but I say they'll have the full potential of their being. I mean, whatever it is. I don't know how to be, but I'm thinking, Jesus took children in his arms and received them, and he blessed them. He's still receiving them. He still blessed them. And I think of King David when his son died. He said, I shall go to him, but he shall not return to me. And then if you read over in Hebrews chapter 11, he's in that Hall of Fame chapter there. David's dead. You reckon he went to see his son yet? I'd say one of the first places he went. I think he did. He said, I'll go to him. And I think he's seen him. And maybe here, I wished I knew everybody really, really good. And maybe some of you say, I wish I knew you a little better. Maybe not. I don't know. But in this life, we have the problem of a sin-influenced heart. And here's what it does. It causes us to isolate ourselves. Sometimes we're afraid we'll hurt others. More times than not, we're afraid others will hurt us. And so we kind of keep our distance. And we're afraid. We don't make real close friendships because people hurt us. People do things. People say things. And I'm going to give you an illustration, but I think I'll just keep it to myself. But sometimes people, even in your church, can do things, and you try to be helpful to them, you try to be generous to them, try to be a friend to them, and it kind of makes you want to isolate yourself. It won't be like that in heaven. You won't be isolating yourself. And then I think about this. In this life, there's a whole lot of people that are just annoying and obnoxious. And the thought of spending eternity with some of them kind of scares me. One fellow said to give him the willies. Well, the thing is, one of these days they're going to be transformed to be just like Jesus, and so am I. So it won't matter then. We'll all be alike. But in this life, we really only know a few people real close and real well, and maybe some family members, maybe a few good friends. But can you imagine what it'll be like when you truly know and love everyone of all the ages, not just of our day, but everyone who's died down through history in the Lord? We'll know them all. And we'll have conversations about, I don't know what we'll talk about, but it'd be worthwhile. I don't see boring in there. Let me read another quote from Dan Schaefer. He says, heaven will be a city of new people, regenerated, renewed, and perfect. Imagine upon arriving in heaven that you discovered to your delight that the first person you met loved you so dearly and deeply that it fairly took all your breath away, and that this expression of love neither embarrassed you nor made you feel strange. You were able to receive this person's love as easily as he or she was able to give it. Then imagine the next person you met loved you with an equivalent, but unique, perfect love as well. On earth, all our love is sin-infected and sin-affected. The best of our loves has to struggle with resentment, envy, jealousy, pride, anger, and other sinful ingredients. In heaven, each person will be a new best friend. A few things to think about when we get there, because people think it's boring. I don't think it's boring. You ever meet a celebrity, sports star, anybody? I don't think I ever have. Well, I did. I guess I don't remember where it was. I think Mr. Dungy we was somewhere, and I think he was close. I don't think I never talked to him, never anything like that. But I was reading one man said he drove all the way to Houston when George W. Bush was president. He said he drove there to meet him. He said, and instead of shaking hands, President Bush gave him a bear hug. Now, I don't know what to think about that, but imagine that kind of thrill when everybody you meet in heaven. It'll be the same. I mean, it's hard because nobody will be a stranger. Everybody will know everything about you. Everybody will be, and it's hard for me to explain, but I'm just simply saying heaven will be enriched by meeting new friends. Won't be boring. Let me give you a third reason it won't be boring, because we'll be engulfed in a symphony of praise. Revelation of chapter 5, verse 6. When John got there, here was a scene of worship. He says, and I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the four beasts, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb as it had been slain. Then down in verse 11 it says, and I beheld, and I heard the voice of many angels round about the throne, and the beasts and the elders, and the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. Now again, this is a specific event in heaven where the Lamb of God, Jesus, comes forward and he opens up a scroll to announce this, the final chapter here in the world's drama. But it's the atmosphere, I guess you could say. Now I love coming to church. And I love worshiping the Lord. I love teaching. I love preaching. I've been I've been teaching first for many years, but the combination of two, I've been doing that for 48 years. And I can't remember ever a Sunday morning, maybe a couple times when I wasn't very well, have my sermon very well in my head, but I really don't remember a Sunday morning ever waking up and saying, oh no, it's Sunday again. But there are a lot of people do. And I don't understand that. And a lot of people in church, they're afraid they're going to get too much church. It worries them. And it's sad, but for some people, the most enjoyable thing that a lot of people do at church is they get out of church. Church is over. They watch their watch. They're looking. And I've had people from this church. I went over 12 o'clock before, and they come up, hey, you're in overtime. And it's like it almost destroys people. And I don't understand that. And sometimes worship's over. And now around here, I noticed a lot of people's hanging around a little bit more. And that's a good thing. But sometimes worship's over, and you storm out to the car. And then to beat all, now I know some of you's guilty of this, but this might just be a habit. But not only are you hurried to get out, but you've already got your car parked backwards, ready to get. I mean, it's like if somebody comes at me, I'm out of this place. And I don't know about that. But we're ready for a fast getaway. And okay, I've got my 2 hours in for the week. I'm good till next Sunday. So the idea of being in an eternal church service, I can see where people say, man, that's going to be boring. I'm not going to be able to take that. Well, let's listen to what this fellow John Eldredge says again. He says, we have settled, he kind of does a little confession on this. He said, we have settled on an image of the never-ending sing-along in the sky. One great hymn after another, forever and ever, amen. And our hearts sink, forever and ever. That's it. That's the good news. And then we sigh and feel guilty that we're not more spiritual. We lose heart, and we turn once more to the present to find what life can be. Well, relax, because heaven is not going to be 6,000 verses of the same praise chorus. And I won't be sitting over there at the piano saying, turn to this page and go here. It's not going to be a sermon that lasts 40 years. That's not going to be heaven. But instead, it'll be the atmosphere. Now, I'm trying to get how to say this. I think, you ever watch a really good show, and then later when you hear the background music from that show, you recognize it, but you realize, you know what, when I watched that show, I didn't realize that music was going on. it's just like the surround sound. You're just in it, and the music, though you're not aware of it, it kind of keeps you moving through the show. It kind of keeps you going and making the experience a little more exciting. And I don't know how to explain it. I like sometimes when I'm writing things back there or typing. I don't do much writing of anything anymore. But and when I study, sometimes I like a little relaxing music, just music. Some kind of people call it elevator music or hospital music or whatever. I like that sometimes. But just as you listen to the radio, some of you can't mow your yard. My son Brian, he's not in here, I don't think, but he cannot mow his grass if he doesn't have something in his ears listening to it. Now, usually it's a sermon, somebody preaching, but if you was to take that out of his ears, he would fall off the lawnmower. That's just the way people are. And you do anything when you're driving or you're working, you've got your radio on or your iPod, you're going or whatever them things are. And just like that, it's always surrounded. That's what it's going to be like in heaven. It'll be like a symphony of praise going on all the time. I don't know how to explain it. And I think about sometimes you listen to music, all of a sudden you hear a song that you know, and you just jump in and start singing along. I think that's heaven. I think that's what we'll be doing. And I just believe we'll do things like that. And there'll be moments when we're serving the Lord, and we'll just break out into singing. Believe it or not, I do that here. People run sometimes. And I talked about Brian having an iPod in his ears. One thing Brian used to always do, and we used to have a good laugh at it, every time he went to the shower, it's like he didn't think anybody in the world could hear him, so he'd start singing. And he is awful. And he'd just be singing in there and singing. If we had dogs, they'd be howling, saying, please stop him. But here's the good news. In heaven, you can sing perfectly. You might not be able to sing now, but right now, if Brother Price come up here to sing, we're dismissing the service. I'm just telling you. But in heaven, he's going to be able to sing. So I'll stop and listen to him. I'll let him sing one. And I thought about this. Through the years, we've had a few people here who wanted to sing, and they tried to sing, but they were just pathetic. I mean, they just couldn't do it. And a couple of them, I had to tell them, singing's not for you. You need to just give that up. And they couldn't carry a tune. They were tone deaf or whatever. One fellow, he described himself. He said he was a prison singer. He said, I'm always behind a few bars and I can't find the key. Well, that's a prison singer. But you know what? Some of those folks that couldn't sing here, they've went on there in heaven now. They're singing right along with the choir, doing fine. So if you can't sing, go ahead and make a joyful noise to the Lord while you're here on this earth. He'll give you a voice when you get over there. I'm simply saying heaven is not going to be boring because we're going to be engulfed in a symphony of praise. There's going to be, I don't know how to describe it. You'll get there, you'll understand it. I've got to go on because we're getting long sermons again. I'm going to start cutting back sometime. Heaven's not going to be boring because we're going to be energized by serving the Lord. I read these verses again, but in 22, but I'm going to read verse 3 again. It says, there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. Shall serve him. You won't be sitting on a cloud wishing you had a magazine. You'll be working. What do? We'll be serving the Lord. We'll be ruling. The Bible says we're going to rule and reign with him. The parable that Jesus told there about the faithful servant is about how we use our gifts and abilities that he's given us here. If we're faithful here, he said, I'll give you more responsibilities in heaven. So if you get to heaven, you've got no responsibilities, you're very unfaithful on earth. That's the only thing I could figure. But here's what he says, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 6, he says, do you not know that the saints shall judge the world? And if the world be judged by you, are ye unworthy to judge the smallest matters? Know ye not that we shall judge angels? How much more things that pertain to this life? So we're going to be working. Now, I don't know how to explain it because I've never been there. And I don't have the perfect mind, and so I'm just trying to get it out the best I can. But we're going to be serving the Lord. And here's the way I like to think of it. If you have a job, most likely you're like me. I never really cared for many parts of the job. So I was always glad when it was time to go home. But what if you'd had a job that was you liked it more than going home? You would rather do that. I mean, it's just a wonderful job. That's what heaven will be like. Everything you do, it won't be like a job. In fact, I tell people this. Someone said, well, no, when you quit working in the factory, what's your job? How's your job now? I said, it's not a job. It's a life now. This is nothing like a job. Being a pastor of a church, nothing like a job. It's completely different. It takes a lot of time, but it's not the same as a job. I'm just telling you that. But in eternity, we'll be serving God. We won't get tired of it. We won't get weary. You get tired here working. You don't get tired in heaven. You do it, and you'll be energized and fulfilled. And it's like there's sometimes you do something and you really feel like you've accomplished something, and you feel pretty good about it. If you've talked to someone and they've been down and discouraged, and you was able to encourage them, that helps you because you've accomplished something. Well, in heaven, we're going to be working for the Lord, and we're going to be accomplishing something that we really wanted, and that's what it's going to be like. Oh, we'll be working, but you won't think of it as work. And so it may be like finishing a job or graduating from college or getting that promotion. If you could take how you feel when that happens and just extend that through eternity, that's what it'll be like. And so although it's work, it's not work. That's what heaven's going to be. And let me read again what Mr. Schaefer says here. He says, God did not create me for a short 70 to 80 year lifespan. I was created for eternity. The gifts, passions, and abilities that God has given and revealed to you are and will remain for your entire earthly existence only in the embryo stage. And those gifts will be yours forever, a part of you that God always had in mind to bloom in you forever. None of us, even the most accomplished among us, have ever experienced anything but the bare budding of our God-given talents and gifts. So whatever you think you're pretty good at here, whatever God gives you ability to do here, he says that's just a little bit of what you're going to be like when you get to heaven. And then the last, and I'll be done here, heaven can't be boring because we're going to be enjoying the presence of Christ. I saved the best for last. The best thing about heaven is seeing the face of Christ. Now, we say that here on this earth, but on this earth, we've still got our sinful flesh. We still got our old way of thinking. So right now, probably to you, it would be more exciting to see your brother, your sister, your parents, your wife, someone there that's already died and went to heaven. Right now in your mind, that's more important. But it won't be when we get to heaven, because then we'll be that perfect person. And seeing him will be in Revelation 22:4 says, and they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads. 1 Corinthians 13 says, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. And the language he's given us here is sort of like a blurred image. It's like looking at a picture that's out of focus. Or like in my day growing up, one of those TVs when the rabbit ears was on there, they wasn't very good. I mean, it's there, but it's just not a very good picture. And maybe like trying to see in a mirror, but it's all fogged up. I mean, you see something, but it's just not real clear. Well, those of us who are saved, we're always looking for the face of Christ. And we see it dimly through faith. I can see Christ working and doing things. I can understand what he's doing, but I see that through faith. But one day, I'll look him straight in the face. One day, it'll be completely different. And he says his names will be on our foreheads. What's that mean, preacher? I think, in my mind, I think what he's saying is Christ will be the foremost thing in my mind. Now, it's Wednesday night, and you're in church, and right now, heaven, because we're talking about it, that might be the foremost thing in your mind. It might be Christ even right now. But when you go tomorrow and you get up and this has to be done and that has to be done, everything else has to be done, he's not way out there in front. But in heaven, he always is. That's all you think about. And nothing is boring. Nothing will be there. And people, we talked about this. People want to know, will they be married in heaven? And we've talked about it. It says it will be like the angels, and the angels don't marry. But contrary to what we might believe, we will be married in heaven. But we'll be married to Christ because the church is the bride of Christ. You and I will be married to Christ. And let me read again what this Schaefer fellow says. He says, human marriage was always meant to be a foreshadow of the things to come. Human marriage is an exclusive relationship between one man and one woman. We desire exclusive love. This special feeling of being the single and only romantic love of the other. In heaven, in his presence forever, we will finally eat the banquet for which all human marriages and loves were hors d'oeuvres. I'm trying to read what he wrote here, and I can't hardly read that word. We will not miss having the one human relationship through which we find our life and fulfillment, for we shall finally experience the real thing with the Lord. So even though we're not married or given in marriage, it's something that we will not miss in heaven. It'll be much better than that. And again, until we get there, we're just trying to touch the surface of some of these things tonight. But when I see the face of Christ, that deep yearning that people have for acceptance it'll be fulfilled. That closeness, that intimacy will be fulfilled better than it ever has in any relationship you've had here on this earth. You might be single or widowed or divorced, but in heaven, all of those previous relationships or lack thereof will be overshadowed by that relationship we have with Christ. So I'm going to wrap up. I'm still going to get done 4:08. I've had to push and go fast. But a Sunday school teacher was teaching her class, her kids about heaven, and she wanted them to understand the importance of believing in Christ. So she asked him, she said, now boys and girls, what do we have to do to go to heaven? One little boy shot his hand up and said, you have to die. Well, that wasn't the answer she was looking for, but the fact is, we are going to die, and we are going to be there someday. If you know Christ, you're still going to die someday, but that day you'll see his face. Or he'll return, and then we'll see him face to face then when he comes and takes us. 500 years ago, a fellow named John Donne wrote this. He said, no man ever saw God and lived, and yet I shall not live till I see God. And then just a few years ago, this fellow that wrote this book, Randy Alcorn, he said, the day I die will be the best day I ever lived. So heaven, it's a place we're going. That tonight was just a little bit of the activity guide. Won't be boring. If you think it's going to be boring, then you don't understand heaven. And for those people who tell you it's going to be boring, they obviously don't understand heaven, because God's got a wonderful place for us. Much more, much better than anything we've ever run across in this life. Now, with that said, if you've got your prayer list with you, let's spend a little time and pray over those folks on that list before we get out of here. Thank you again for being part of the service tonight. And maybe when I get through these thoughts with heaven, I'll get back to something shorter. But I get to writing things, and I've not had much time. Sometimes I erase things. I'll put some down. That's just too much. But when you're talking about heaven, you just keep throwing more stuff in. So I would tell you what I was going to preach about next week, but I don't even know. Something about heaven. That's all I know. We'll figure it out when we get there. So if you got a prayer list, let's go to prayer.